Whether you like making little gifts or creating elaborate raw edge applique art, you'll want a sewing space that is pleasant and works for you. Hi, I'm Beth, and today I'm going to share with you my top tips for organizing the sewing room to streamline work and find your organizational bliss. First up, discount magnetic tool holders. This one resides on the end of my semi-industrial sewing machine table on the business end next to the actual machine, and it's just a convenient place for all these kinds of things. And this is a brand new expensive foot. It sticks, and some will not. You'll notice the things I like to hang here because it's right near my iron. This is on the end of a shelf, and you'll notice it's also at an angle because the shelf is not wide enough for this 18-inch hanger. These are new rotary cutter blades, used ones, and they'll stick up here. It's a strong enough magnet. And my bias tape makers, and it's right near my iron, which I like to hang. Those are strips of bias tape. They're not actually cut on the bias, except for these ones. Those can be used for binding seams or other jobs. I wanted to let you know that the items in this video are the things that I've used for a very long time, but as an Amazon affiliate, I will earn for qualifying purchases. The iron in front of the window, though, is what I like to do because I see birds and squirrels playing in the trees all the time, and I see trees blooming, and it's just lovely. Although earlier today it was snowing. I've shown this before in videos, but it's so important that I'm going to show it again. I like to have my iron on a floor switch. I want to be able to see the light from the door. I really do like my iron because it'll do things like steam scarves on a setting that doesn't scorch the scarf. It's most important that any of these ideas work for your situation. I find these days that I'm pro cube storage, and I love that these bins that I have a lot of will fit right in here. You can see everything on the labels, and I can set little things like paintbrushes or whatever on the side, and when I get to pulling a box out, I can put things properly away. This is the 13-inch size. It's quite roomy and very sturdy because the edges around the sides are all thicker dimension than the shelves themselves. I'm also a fan of the 11-inch size for all kinds of things, including fabric sorted by color. Label those little bins. You'll thank yourself when you can find things easily later and they're not full of dust. That teeny tiny line of light is there because my windows are covered with UV film. It actually may be privacy film, which in some cases has a higher UV protection rating, but I do that so that my product and my materials don't get excessive sunlight on them week after month after year, sitting in direct sunlight somewhere in the sewing room. If you have fabrics that are sitting in direct sunlight in the sewing room on your shelf, what I like to do is just make a drape out of this kind of a suede-like fabric that you can get from the clearance area at the chain store. This is actually it's folded in four. It's perfectly good drape for being at a show, and I like to round the corners. And so I'm not gonna ruin this by changing it a lot. I just wanted to show you though, when you do cut around this and take away whatever you're not going to use, it leaves a nice clean edge. Stuff you're going to sell later, stuff you're going to make into items that you sell. I like to try to protect it from UV rays. I love this little inexpensive cart. I have another one in the basement that's gray. This one's white. I keep 2-gallon Ziplocs full of scraps in it next to the sewing machine. I try to come through here regularly and kind of straighten things up, but I can keep my canned air and some of the oil for the machines and different things I use regularly. I try to straighten this up every now and then, but it rolls out of my way when it's in a bad place or when it's time to clean the floors, and I've been really happy with this. So often when you buy something, it's really not worth what you pay. The main thing with this is to really have a place for this stuff, and so I have this cupboard that has a bulletin board cut in half on the outside, and on the inside it has a place for my notes and sketches. I do keep the serger in here, keep the thread clean, and there's the little electronic up-down thingy that we haven't installed yet with my servo. There's Rosemary's book. She's a very nice woman. When I contacted her about featuring her book in a video, she was very kind and said I could. I still recommend it if you want to do raw edge applique. That's a great place to start. And then I put out a couple watercolor books. If people are still into that, it was sort of a fad. Still a really interesting thing that will really teach you about value and really inform your other art quilting. If you make a few watercolor quilts, I really recommend it. It's fun. Your family will help. Some little art quilts that have portions of them with those tiny little squares, and you want to keep them organized. Even the chains will usually just give you a stack of boxes if you ask. The next item I want to talk about is this table. I love this table. It's probably the most expensive thing that I've ever purchased for the sewing room that wasn't an actual sewing thing. But what it is a stand-up type of a desk. It goes all the way from sewing machine height with a chair to cutting table height, like when I'm working on binding this horse or figuring out what to do with the cow that I painted. And it'll go even higher to accommodate video editing, because I love to video edit. Sitting all day is not good for anyone, and so I like to stand part of the time. This is the hand crank, and it's pretty slow. I didn't spring for the motor, but you certainly can. So it goes all the way down. It's a little harder on the way up. It's a little bit like Doug Heffernan and his, what do they call those? Dumbwaiter on King of Queens. That was a hilarious episode. But it's reasonable, good for your arms. And so you can do this. And it worked just great. This just pulls out, and you try not to lose it. It doesn't stick to the magnets. I think my husband always says it's pig iron, but who knows what that is. But that's not the only reason I like it. It's on wheels. It's very sturdy. I'm very happy with the construction. There are different tops and different colors, and I agonized a little, but I like my white one. I haven't noticed any degradation of the top. I've had mine for 2 years, and it rolls right over this outdoor carpet that I wasn't planning to put in here because I liked the flooring I picked out, but terrible for filming. Who knew you could move sewing rooms and then create all kinds of sound problems? I know I have terrible sound, you guys. It's not something I can put money into, and that's all right. Turn on the television and check out the sound right now. Anyway, it moves around as easily as my little cart that I love. And so this is a favorite item. Sometimes specialty items deserve a specialty solution. This is that acrylic table that I've shown in other videos that makes it so you can use your regular, whatever they call that, free arm sewing machine to quilt on with a little bit bigger space. It is higher than a standard table height because this sits on the tabletop. But when I moved to this smaller sewing room, I thought that it was time to store this somewhere safe. In the bigger sewing rooms it had been fine, but here I was really concerned that it was going to get broken, that these legs would get broken off. They're held on by these screws, and so you really don't want to reef on those too much. And so my husband actually made that for me, but I did take shop in high school, and if I had to, I'm pretty sure I could have come up with something myself. It may not have been as nice. Someday I'll paint that. Maybe when I paint the trim in here and the French door and try to do the little bit of finish work. I've talked about it in videos why you might want to be able to carry your design wall around the house, and it reminds me of an old-fashioned chalk tray, and it makes it so that this is removable. Put it at the end of a hallway, because I like to always consider what things look like from a distance, and I can barely in this room get 8 feet away from this design wall. The back of your mind will be figuring out how can I make it so that tree pops against that mountainside a little better. And so I really recommend that for the bigger stuff that will be viewed from a distance. I want my work to pull them forward. For the viewer who asked me why I didn't just have a servo, thank you, because I did it and I love it, and it took me a while to get used to it. I kind of stopped sewing for a while, but it's been a period of huge transition. We've become empty nesters, but not before my mom moved to town 2 years ago. But so this is a really nice thing for hiding messes, you know, because behind here, it has my product bins in it right now. So that's potholders. That's on the bottom is purses, and you saw that I could cover while I'm filming. I can pull it across and hope that it helps with the sound problem between having some rug on the floor and having this curtain in here. I hope it's helping. So some of you may be bored that I'm talking at all about these sound deadening things, but this one is something I made out of these kinds of acoustic panels that you can get in lots of colors. And so I just went with one that's the same as my table. So I'll sort of set it up to the sewing area with, I usually have 3 lights aimed at what I'm working on. Was easier in the old place. I just had windows. This nice gentleman took my picture at an art fair and then gave me a copy. I thought it was very sweet.